They say a picture's worth 1,000 words, but the one thing no one tells you, sometimes the most important part of the picture, is the one someone tried to erase. The flash went off. The photographer was trying to gather everyone, Jake's family, all in coordinated white and tan outfits for one last group shot before dessert. I stood off to the side, waiting for someone to wave me in. My daughter Raya tugged at my sleeve, whispering, "Aren't you going to be in the picture, Mom?" I gave her a half smile. "I'll wait to be asked, honey." Then I heard her voice, Marla, my mother-in-law, sharp as ever, loud enough that the whole backyard could hear her. "Just crop her out," she said, waving her hand dismissively toward me. "We want family in this one." There was a pause, the kind of pause that hangs in the air like a thundercloud. A few awkward chuckles. One of Jake's cousins coughed. I looked toward my husband, my own husband, to see if he'd say anything. He didn't. He didn't blink, didn't move, didn't speak. He just stood there, hands in his pockets, like I wasn't even there. I felt something in me collapse quietly. I didn't make a scene, I didn't cry. I just nodded slightly to no one, turned toward the patio, and walked back into the house. I didn't even realize Raya was following me until she closed the sliding door behind her. "Mom," she whispered, staring up at me with those big brown eyes. Why didn't Dad say anything? I didn't have an answer, not one I wanted to give a 10-year-old. I bent down and tried to steady my voice. "You know what I always tell you, right? If someone tries to leave you out, save the part of you they tried to erase." Raya just nodded. "I know. That's why I kept it." I blinked. Kept what she reached into the little crossbody bag she'd brought to the party, the one with the sparkly butterfly on the front, and pulled out a tiny pink USB drive. "This is the footage," she said, her voice just above a whisper. "The videos you let me help you edit. The ones I saved on my tablet. And some new ones, too. I made a video." "For today?" I stared at her, stunned. "You made a video." She nodded again, firmer this time. "You told me to keep the important stuff safe?" I did. Then she handed me the USB carefully, like it was something sacred. I closed my fingers around it, but I couldn't speak. I just looked at her, my 10-year-old daughter, braver than anyone at that party. The rest of the house buzzed with laughter and clinking glasses. People shouting across tables, music playing from a Bluetooth speaker, the photographer snapping away. All of it faded to white noise. I looked down at the USB again and realized maybe I wasn't invisible after all. Maybe someone had seen me the whole time. I wasn't always invisible. When Jake and I first met in college, it felt like something out of a movie. We sat next to each other in Intro to Psych. He forgot his notebook. I lent him a sheet of paper. A week later, we were eating burritos on the library steps, laughing until the campus lights flicked off. He was warm, funny, and thoughtful. He listened. That's what made me fall for him. He really listened. We got married just 2 years after graduation. Fast, maybe, but it felt right. Then I met Marla. Jake's mother was polite at first. Too polite. She wore pearls to a backyard BBQ and always gave me this tight-lipped smile like she was holding back something acidic. When I hugged her for the first time, she barely touched my back. No warmth, just cool bone under linen. "She's just traditional," Jake would say whenever I brought it up. Don't take it personally. I tried not to. I really did. I told myself I just needed time, that we'd eventually find our rhythm, that maybe I wasn't what she pictured for Jake. But once she saw how much we loved each other, she'd come around. But Marla didn't soften. At our wedding, she insisted on planning most of it, down to the color of the tablecloths and which side of the aisle her family sat on. She wore a long white lace dress that looked suspiciously bridal, then joked to her friends, "Well, I am the mother of the groom." Jake said nothing. That was the first time I felt it. That sinking feeling in my chest when the person who should be defending you chooses to stay silent. Over the years, it only got worse. Every Thanksgiving at their house, she'd set my plate last. If I brought a dish, she'd say, "That's cute, but we don't really do that here." If I brought wine, she'd serve something else, always smiling, always sugar-coated cruelty. And Jake, he'd retreat into himself. He didn't like conflict. He'd squeeze my hand under the table, give me a small smile, and whisper later, "She doesn't mean anything by it. She's just particular." That was Jake's favorite word, particular. I used to think it meant quirky, but with Marla, it meant territorial. It meant manipulative. And over time, it meant I began to question myself. Was I too sensitive? Was I overreacting? 1. I became quieter at family gatherings. I stopped trying to help in the kitchen. I'd sit with the kids instead of the adults. I stopped bringing things up to Jake because I already knew the response. Let it go. It's not worth the fight. But the silence started eating away at me. My confidence, my joy, my sense of belonging. I used to be this vibrant creative person, freelancing in design journaling, decorating our apartment with little DIY projects. But slowly I began shrinking myself until only one person still seemed to see the full version of me, Raya, my daughter, my tiny fearless shadow. From the time she was little, Raya saw the things no one else would say out loud. She'd ask why Grandma never hugged me, why I always served myself last, why Daddy's family didn't say thank you when I cooked dinner. "Do they not like you?" she asked once out of nowhere while we were folding laundry. I gave her a soft smile and said sometimes people don't show love the way we expect. She frowned. "But that doesn't mean they get to be mean." She was only 7 when she said that. But it stuck with me. We spent a lot of time together baking editing videos on her tablet, turning our home videos into little family montages. It was our thing. I always told her, capture the good stuff. The important stuff. That way you always have proof it happened. I didn't realize back then that she was taking that advice so literally, because as much as I tried to shield her from Marla's coldness or Jake's indifference, Raya saw it, all of it, and she filed it away in her heart like she was preparing for something. Looking back, maybe she always knew. Maybe she saw the way I shrunk myself to fit into spaces that weren't built for me. Maybe she knew that one day I'd need a reminder that I mattered, that I was worth being seen, that I belonged in the picture. It started like any other forced family gathering with Marla in charge and me on the outside quietly trying to hold my peace. Jake's 35th birthday was coming up, and Marla was practically vibrating with excitement. "I'm throwing him a real celebration," she said during a family call I was mysteriously left off of. "Not just one of those sad little dinners you throw together at the house." She said that, out loud, on speaker. I was standing right there when Jake didn't correct her. He just laughed, scratched the back of his neck, and said, "Sure, Mom. Sounds great." When he hung up, I stared at him. "A sad little dinner," Jake shrugged. "You know she doesn't mean it like that." Yes, she did. She always did. She chose the venue, a rented backyard of one of her friends' country homes, complete with white tents, custom banners, and a catered spread that cost more than our monthly mortgage. When I offered to help with the setup, she dismissed me with a forced smile. "You can just bring the cake, Leona. That's something you've always been good at." It was like a slap. I spent 10 years folding myself into this family, and I had been reduced to just bring the cake. I smiled through gritted teeth and said, "Of course." At home, I baked the best damn cake I'd ever made. Chocolate mocha layers, raspberry compote, piped flowers in his favorite colors. I even bought sparklers for the top. Not because I wanted to impress Marla, but because Raya was excited. "It's going to be epic," she told me while licking frosting off her fingers. I nodded, forcing a smile. "It will be." But something in me already knew. This party wasn't for us. The day of the event was hot, California summer in full swing. I wore a soft sage dress, one of the few things Marla hadn't criticized yet, and helped Raya put her hair in little braids. She wore her glitter sandals and a unicorn purse, her USB drive tucked safely inside. When we arrived, the tension hit before we even made it out of the car. Marla was at the entrance like a hostess at a 5-star restaurant greeting everyone by name. She greeted Jake with a long, performative hug. Then she looked at me. Her eyes scanned me like I was a stain she couldn't quite remove. "Leona," she said, "there's a table in the back corner. Just drop the cake there. Just drop the cake." Raya tugged my hand. Can we go say hi to the photographer? He has a drone camera. I smiled. Sure, baby, let's go. The photographer was young, maybe in his 20s, setting up lighting near the gazebo where the slideshow would be shown later. He was friendly, warm, respectful. He asked if we wanted a photo. I declined. Something felt off, like I was being watched. The party went on. Laughter, drinks, old stories being retold. Jake was surrounded by cousins and friends. He looked happy, and I wanted to be happy for him. I really did, but every time I tried to join a conversation, someone shifted away. Every time I offered a comment, it was ignored. At one point, I stood by the drink table and watched Jake hug his aunt, then his godmother, then even Marla's friend Clara, but not me. He hadn't so much as touched my shoulder the entire afternoon. Then came the photo call. Everyone in front of the arbor, someone yelled. I stayed back unsure. The photographer looked toward me and raised his hand as if silently asking, Should I wait for you? Then Marla said, it loud, clear, cruel. Just crop her out. It echoed. I swear it echoed. I turned toward Jake. His hands were in his pockets. His eyes were on the grass. He didn't flinch, didn't blink, didn't say a single thing. Something inside me shattered, but quietly, like a porcelain teacup with a perfect break. No sharp edges, just clean pain. I stepped back. I didn't make a scene. I just walked away. Behind me, Raya caught up, her face flushed and confused. Mom, she said, what did Grandma mean? I kneeled down, swallowing the burn in my throat. It means she doesn't see me. Not really. Raya furrowed her brow. But I do. And that's when she reached into her bag, pulled out the USB, and handed it to me. She looked me in the eye and said, You said to keep the important stuff safe. So I did. I want to show it today before Grandma plays her slideshow. I looked at her, my daughter, my ally, and I realized something. I wasn't just the outsider. I was the one holding the truth. I sat on the edge of the guest room bed, my fingers still wrapped around the pink USB drive, like it was the only thing anchoring me to the floor. My ears buzzed. My chest felt tight. Laughter still drifted in from the backyard, unbothered, oblivious. Somewhere outside, they were cutting into the appetizers, toasting with wine. My cake was probably sitting forgotten on the corner table, untouched under a plastic dome. I stared down at the drive in my palm, just this little piece of plastic. And yet, somehow, I knew it was heavier than it looked. Raya stood in the doorway, half lit by sunlight streaking through the blinds. She was chewing her lip nervously, waiting for my response. I saved everything she said softly. All the videos we made, the ones where we laughed, the one where Dad helped you paint the kitchen, and the ones I made, like the one where Grandma told you to stop acting like you're the wife in this family. I didn't mean to record that one, but I didn't delete it either. I blinked. You kept all of that? She nodded quickly. I didn't know why at first. I just knew it felt important. And then this morning I thought maybe today's the day. Today. Her voice was steady, but her eyes shimmered with a kind of quiet fire I'd only seen a few times, usually when another kid tried to cut her in line at school or when she stood up for a friend being teased. But this was different. I want them to know who you are, she said, and what they missed. I swallowed, trying to breathe past the knot in my throat. This wasn't just about a slideshow anymore. This was about truth, about being seen after years of being edited out. I looked at my reflection in the mirror across the room. My eyes were rimmed red. My makeup had faded, but under the exhaustion I saw something I hadn't seen in a long time. Steel. Not rage, not revenge, just clarity. Okay, I said, finally standing up and tucking the USB into my purse. If we're going to do this, we do it right. Raya grinned. We headed back toward the backyard as the sun began to dip. Marla was front and center, holding a glass of white wine and commanding the attention of the entire family. Jake stood beside her, one hand lazily holding a beer, the other in his pocket. He caught my eye for a second, but looked away too fast. Marla raised her voice. Thank you all for coming to celebrate my son. We've prepared a beautiful slideshow of Jake's best memories through the years. Thank you to everyone who contributed, especially Clara, for helping me pick the music. Applause rippled through the crowd. I stepped forward. Wait, I said, not loud, not angry, just firm. Everyone turned. I have something to play first? For Jake. Marla blinked. Excuse me, it won't take long, I said, pulling the USB from my purse. Raya made something for today. The DJ, a local college kid probably just glad someone was paying him, looked at me and then at Raya, who gave him a thumbs up and whispered something I didn't catch. He shrugged, took the drive, and plugged it into his laptop. The music stopped. The screen on the projector flickered. The party fell silent. Marla started to speak, but Jake raised a hand gently, his first real action in hours. Let's see what it is, he said. That surprised even me. The screen came to life. First, a video from our living room, Raya's second birthday, me frosting cupcakes with icing all over my nose, Jake filming all three of us laughing, then clips from school plays, Christmas mornings, camping trips, inside jokes, years of our life, a family we built. Next, the shift footage of Marla brushing past me in a hallway, of her whispering behind my back, of her saying she'll never be one of us, and Jake walking right past one clip after another, not malicious, just real, and at the very end, a still photo. I'm asleep on the couch holding a sick, feverish Raya close to my chest. Her arms are wrapped around my neck like I'm her entire world. The screen fades to black. Then, in white lettering, you said to keep the important stuff safe. I did. Love, Raya. The air was so still I could hear the sparklers crackling on the cake in the distance. Nobody said a word, not Marla, not Jake, not for 10 whole minutes, and in that silence I felt seen. The silence was deafening. The screen had faded to black, but no one moved. No one spoke. You could hear the rustle of the trees and the breeze, the soft buzz of a nearby mosquito lamp. Even the music stopped, like the party itself had gone still, suspended in a moment that felt too big to touch. 10 minutes, 10 full minutes of nothing. It doesn't sound like much until you're standing in it, when your breath catches with every second and your heart pounds like a drum in a church sanctuary. I stood with Raya by my side, my hands still slightly trembling from clutching the USB. Across the yard, Marla stood frozen, her lips slightly parted. Her wine glass was still raised halfway to her mouth, forgotten. She looked like she had just seen her reflection in a mirror for the first time and didn't recognize what was staring back. Jake's eyes were on the screen, even though it had already gone dark. His face was unreadable, part shame, part shock, part something else I hadn't seen in years. Awareness. No one clapped. This wasn't that kind of video. Raya reached up and squeezed my hand. I knelt beside her, pulled her into a side hug, and whispered, "You are so brave." She leaned into me. "I just wanted them to know who you are." That line. That was the moment I felt the tears come. Not from pain this time, but from relief. After years of being erased, gaslit, minimized, someone finally told the truth. Not just someone, my daughter. Jake slowly walked toward us. I didn't know what he was going to say. I didn't know if I even wanted to hear it. He crouched beside us and looked at Raya first. "You made that?" he asked. She nodded, not smugly, not defiantly, just honestly. "It's all real." He looked down at the grass, then at me. His voice cracked. "Why didn't you tell me it had gotten that bad?" I held his gaze. "I did, Jake. You just didn't want to hear it. There it was. The truth we'd been circling for years." He opened his mouth to speak, but closed it again. For the first time, Jake didn't try to explain it away. He didn't defend his mom. He didn't redirect. He just sat in the weight of it. Marla finally stepped forward. Her face had changed, not red with anger, not outraged, pale, blank, unmoored. "Didn't know she was recording," she said flatly. I stood up. She shouldn't have needed to. Marla looked around the yard, expecting anyone to come to her defense. But no one moved. No one spoke. Even her friends stayed seated, their eyes cast downward like they were trying to disappear. For once, Marla was alone in her silence. Jake stood and faced her. His voice was quiet but firm. "You heard her over and over, and I let you." He turned back to me. I don't know how to fix that. I don't either, I said, but I know I'm done pretending it didn't happen. The DJ approached us hesitantly. Should I play the other slideshow now? I looked at Raya. She shook her head. No, I said more calmly than I expected. I think the party's over. People started gathering their things. No one rushed. No one panicked, but they all moved with that same quiet understanding. Something had cracked open in this family, and it wasn't going to be sealed shut again. As the crowd thinned out, I looked around the backyard one more time. I remembered the feeling from earlier when I was told to just drop the cake and stay out of the way when my place in the picture had been denied without hesitation. But now that same backyard felt different. Not welcoming, no, but honest, like it had finally seen what was always there. I picked up the USB from the DJ's table and slipped it back into Raya's purse. Let's go home, baby, she grinned. Can we have leftover cake for dinner? I laughed, a real one this time. Absolutely. Jake walked us to the car. No grand gesture, no desperate plea, just a long, lingering look as he opened the door for Raya. Thank you, he said quietly, for letting her show me. I didn't say anything back. Not because I was cold, but because some things don't need to be answered. Not yet. He stood there on the curb as we drove away, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel erased. I felt like the frame finally widened, like the story finally included me. We didn't speak much on the drive home. Raya sat in the back seat with her head resting against the window, humming softly under her breath. Calm, like she'd just done something ordinary, like she hadn't just cracked open a truth in front of 30 people. I glanced at her through the rearview mirror and saw it again, that quiet fire in her eyes. It wasn't the kind that burned everything down. It was the kind that lit a way forward. When we got home, I kicked off my shoes, peeled out of the dress Marla had once passive-aggressively called too earthy, and changed into leggings and one of Jake's old college hoodies. I felt exhausted but light. My soul, for once, didn't feel like it was carrying someone else's weight. Raya padded into the kitchen, opened the fridge, and pulled out the leftovers from the cake I'd made. Dinner, she asked with a grin. I chuckled. Dinner. We sat at the table, just the two of us, eating cake off mismatched plates under the soft hum of the overhead light. No noise, no pressure, just us. Later that night, after I tucked Raya in, I sat at the edge of my bed scrolling through old photos on my phone, ones I had stopped looking at because they felt like proof of a lie, a happy family that had made me feel invisible behind closed doors. But now those photos felt different. I saw myself in them, really saw myself holding Raya, laughing at Jake's stupid jokes, decorating birthday cupcakes at 2 a.m. after working a full shift. I had been there. I had shown up. Just because someone tried to crop me out didn't mean I hadn't existed. The next morning, Jake texted, "Just one sentence. Can we talk?" I stared at the screen for a long time before answering. Not yet. Because I wasn't ready, not for reconciliation, not for another silence disguised as peace. I needed space to figure out what my own story looked like without trimming myself down to fit into someone else's frame. I called my sister Yana that afternoon. She lived 2 hours away and had a spare room. She didn't ask questions. She just said, "Come stay as long as you need." So we packed up a few things, just the essentials: clothes, school supplies, the photo albums I used to keep hidden in a drawer. I let Raya bring her video tablet and, of course, her little pink USB. She held it like it was a treasure map. When we got to Yana's place, she opened the door with tears in her eyes and arms wide open. "Took you long enough," she whispered as she pulled me into a hug. We stayed for a few weeks. I worked remotely from her dining room. Raya enrolled temporarily at the local school, made friends fast because that's just who she is, and spent most afternoons helping Yana's dog learn new tricks. In the evenings, we cooked together. We danced in the kitchen. We laughed. And slowly, I started to feel whole again. One night, as I was folding laundry, Raya came in and asked, "Do you think Grandma will ever say, 'Sorry'?" I looked at her, thinking hard before answering. Maybe. Maybe not. She nodded, already seeming to understand. "That's okay. I didn't make the video for her. No, I made it for you." I hugged her tight. That moment stayed with me because it reminded me of something I'd forgotten. Sometimes healing doesn't start with an apology. It starts with truth, with being seen, with reclaiming space in a picture you were never supposed to disappear from. A few months later, Jake came to visit, not to win me back, not to plead, just to own what he hadn't before. He looked me in the eye and said I didn't protect you, and I should have. I believed him, but I also knew something else: that belief doesn't require return. Closure doesn't always mean going back. We're still co-parenting, kind, civil, consistent, but I don't shrink around him anymore. I don't excuse things for the sake of peace, because peace that costs your dignity, that's just silence in disguise. I live differently now, louder, fuller, uncropped. Raya and I have movie nights with popcorn and throw pillows. We still make videos together. Only now they're just for fun, just for us. And every now and then, when I catch my reflection or laugh a little too loudly in a restaurant, I remember they tried to cut me out. But I was the frame. I was the whole picture. If this story touched something in you, if you've ever been made to feel small, ignored, or pushed to the edges of your own life, just know you're not alone. There are people out there who see you. And sometimes the most powerful moment isn't when someone apologizes. It's when you finally realize you don't need their permission to exist fully. If you felt that, please take a second to leave a comment, share your story, or just say, I see you, to someone else. Like this video if it moved you. Share it with a friend who needs to hear it. Subscribe to the channel for more true stories that don't just entertain. They make you feel. This is Leona, and I'm done being cropped out. Thanks for watching.